as Cliff was known to be an habitual early riser. After calling out and making further attempts to ascertain the problem, Daniel looked further around the property. He noted the family car was not in its usual position, and there were both a cut log and Christmas gifts lying on the porch. Peering through the windows, there was a very dim light on inside. Somebody was inside, but ignoring his calls. He realised something must be wrong in the house and took the decision to enter, cutting through the screen door. Even the worst fears of his imagination could not have prepared him for the carnage that greeted him. The entire Walkie family was dead, all murdered, including their small children, and there were still gifts underneath the Christmas tree. Cliff, 25, lived with his wife Christine, 24, and their two young children, Jimmy, age 3, and Debbie, age 1. The family was young and growing, and looked set to be pillars of the community for many years to come. However, Christine now lay in a pool of blood at the entrance to the living room. Cliff and Jimmy were slumped in the corner, and upstairs baby Debbie laid in a blood-filled bath. Daniel hastily ran from the house and called the police. Working at the scene, police began to search the home for evidence and soon discovered that items were missing. Some of them were quite bizarre. Christine's high school majorette uniform was gone, as was Cliff's pocket knife. However, most unusually, the couple's marriage license had been stolen, leading some to suspect that perhaps an old flame of Christine's had come to carry out a terrible act of revenge on the young husband and wife. Alongside the items missing, there was also a significant amount of evidence left at the scene by the culprit. There was a bloody and discarded cowboy boot, a cellophane strip from a cigarette wrapper, and a fingerprint on the bathtub facet. Reconstructing events, police ascertained that the family had been out running errands and believed that Christine arrived home first around 4 p.m. on Saturday, the 19th of December. Entering, she wasn't attacked straight away and had enough time to store the groceries before she was ambushed by the assailant or assailants. Whether they were already in the house or Christine let them in is unknown for sure, but it seems likely the reason the family car was in a different location is that somebody else had parked in the family spot. This didn't alarm Christine, and logically, the occupant of that car was then known to her, letting them in before being attacked. Christine fought viciously, using her high-heeled shoes and staining them with blood, even making it out of the house before being dragged back inside. Then she was taken to Jimmy's bedroom and raped on the bed before being shot with a .22 firearm. Christine was likely still struggling at this point, as the first bullet barely grazed her. The second one, however, didn't miss. Not long afterwards, Cliff also returned home with Jimmy and Debbie. Cliff was shot in the face immediately, followed by Jimmy. The young boy had been eating a lollipop that he'd been bought as a treat, but Jimmy didn't die. Mortally wounded, he crawled to his dead father, seeking his protection. The killer put 2 more bullets in the back of the child's skull. Now the killer turned to Debbie and shot her too. It seems likely also somehow survived. Out of ammunition, the killer took the baby to the bathroom and drowned her in the bathtub. Whether the 1-year-old's death came from the bullet wound or the water was never ascertained. It seems almost sure that there was more than one attacker, with forensic evidence discovering a dark-coloured hair in the bathroom and a long blonde hair inside Christine's dress. Initial suspects in the case included Daniel himself, a local by the name of Wilbur Tucker, and a cousin of Cliff by the name of Albert Walker. Daniel passed a polygraph and was quickly eliminated. Meanwhile, Tucker was seen as a local pervert, having tried to kiss Christine in the past and regularly making indecent propositions. Cliff had threatened to kill him, but he had a watertight alibi for the time of the murders. Albert, on the other hand, would be on the police radar for some time. Described as wild, he was violent and boisterous when drunk, many believing him to be mentally unwell. Albert had also previously made advances towards Christine, and family members thought the grief show was fake, the suspect having fainted twice at the funeral. He passed the polygraph, and even though there is significant controversy over the validity of early tests, Albert was finally eliminated through DNA in 2006. The best suspect at the time was possibly Curtis McCall, a man described as a troublemaker with a history of violence. Local gossip was that McCall was engaged in an affair with Christine Walker, and he was known to own a .22 caliber gun. Brought in for questioning, McCall denied having any romantic interest in Christine, and evasively said he had sold the weapon not long ago. McCall underwent 3 separate polygraph tests, and during each one, the suspect was so nervous that they all ended inconclusively. Yet the test showed that he was highly likely lying when asked if he withheld information. Just a few months after the massacre, bloody clothing from the Walker home was then discovered in a shed not far away. The items, including shirts, a blouse and pants, belonged to Cliff and Christine and were all soaked. Police theorised that they had been grabbed and used to wipe the blood off the killer or killers. The discovery was interesting, as it would be unlikely that a stranger to the area would know the shed. In all, hundreds of suspects were interviewed and given polygraphs, but the leads went nowhere, and the case was soon going cold, until police believed they had a break in 1962, when serial killer Emmett Monroe Spencer claimed responsibility. Yet Spencer was a known pathological liar, and his claims were soon dismissed as a false confession by Sarasota County Sheriff Ross Boyer. It is possible that the police already had the killers in custody. In the early hours of November the 15th, 1959, Perry Smith and Richard Hickok entered the Clutter home in Holcomb, Kansas. Smith and Hickok had recently been released from the Kansas State Penitentiary. Hickok's former cellmate responsible for pulling the trigger on all 4 killings. The pair got away with a radio, a set of binoculars, and less than $50. While the killers were still at large, legendary writer Truman Capote learned of the killings and decided to write about the slaughter, travelling to Kansas alongside childhood friend Harper Lee, who is author of To Kill a Mockingbird. Together, they interviewed hundreds of locals and the investigators working on the case. The notes for the planned book ran to 8,000 pages. The culprits were eventually arrested 6 weeks after the killings in Las Vegas and ultimately executed by hanging on April the 14th, 1965. The year after, Capote published a book. It would be arguably the most significant true crime work of all time, and it is called In Cold Blood. However, while both Smith and Hickok would be dead and buried by the time Capote released his pioneering book, there was still very much at large on December the 19th, 1959. Indeed, the Walker family killings are given several pages in the book, the author dismissing any connection. However, in 2012, the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office once again began to look into a possible link, having originally considered them suspects as early as 1960, around the time of their arrest. The pair were among the many suspects who were given a polygraph, which they both passed, being dismissed from the inquiry. Capote had insisted that the pair had an alibi for the time of the killings. Still, Kansas and Florida investigators have contended that there are flaws in the account, with some witnesses standing against the alibi. After the slaughter at the Clutter family farm, the duo had then stolen a car and began to make their way to Florida, headed for Miami. They were seen a dozen times on the way. Arriving in Miami Beach, the pair was located just 4 hours away from the Walker family home and checked out of their motel the morning of the killings. When they were arrested, they had a pocket knife similar to the one described as missing from Cliff Walker's body. At the time of the murders, the Walkers had been thinking about buying a 1956 Chevrolet Bel Air, and this was the same car that Smith and Hickok had stolen back in Kansas, using it during their flight across the country. Knowing they were seen throughout the state looking for work, investigators had theorised that the duo bumped into the Walker family and got talking, or simply contacted them, either way under the pretense that they were planning on selling the vehicle. Arriving at the house when Christine was alone, she wouldn't have suspected their real intention. The same day, they were positively identified at a department store just a few miles away, and one of them had a scratched face. There have been minor developments in the case in the years since the scent went cold. For example, in 1994, a woman called the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office and claimed to be a bartender in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. She said one of her regular customers had got drunk at the bar one night and began crying, saying that he had killed some people in Osprey, Florida, when he was a young man, and he mentioned the name Walker. She believed he did occasional work about town and was a gun enthusiast. The bartender never called again. In December of 2012, it was announced that Smith and Hickok's bodies would be exhumed to match their DNA to semen samples taken from Christine back in 1959. The case wasn't a priority, and it marriage licence. The taking of these items from the crime scene is suggestive that the killing was directly targeting Christine and the family, rather than the tragic results of a home invasion. While police officially believe that Smith and Hickok remain the best suspects in this cold case, it's worth noting that the marriage licence was eventually returned to the family when a relative included it in items that were given to Cliff Walker's niece. The tragedy that fell upon Osprey at Christmas in 1959 was an unimaginable horror, and one that by all rights deserved justice. Sadly, it never came. Maybe the killer was a relative who bore some grudge against the Walkers, or simply wished to engage in his carnal fantasies.